Not having kids is hands down the most selfish thing you could do in your lifetime.
I cannot with this video. Strap in, everyone.
I feel like now more than ever, our society is moving away from having kids. More often than not, a lot of them say they actually don't want to have kids. You still decide to not have kids, I think you're being selfish. You are being selfish because you're supposed to be a parent.
Yeah, this just isn't true. Not everyone is supposed to be a parent. And I can say that because I grew up with one parent who did not want kids. And my sister and I could tell. And when I brought up the fact that there are a lot of parents out there who abuse their kids, you told me I was cynical. But it's just a fact that a ton of parents abuse their kids, either physically or mentally. If that weren't the case, CPS wouldn't exist, and most social workers and therapists would have a lot less work to do. Personally, I know I shouldn't be a parent. I am a lot like my parent who didn't want kids, so there's that. But also, I have anxiety and depression. Aside from the fact that that would make it very hard for me to be a parent, I think it's also pretty selfish to take the chance of passing on those illnesses to a child. I was a child with depression and anxiety. Why would I want another child to go through that? You also seem to think that once someone meets the right person, they'll want to have kids. And I've experienced this in two ways. Just a few days ago, my parents marked their 40-year wedding anniversary. So one can assume they chose the right person. My dad still didn't and doesn't really want kids. I've also been in a relationship with someone I wanted to marry. We were together for 7 years. Neither of us wanted kids. You can say all you want that, oh, then that wasn't the right person for you. But he and I have dated other people since we broke up, and we still don't want kids, and we are both in our mid to late 30s.
That's what we were made in this life to be.
Yeah, no. And there are tons of parents out there who hurt their children on purpose. And no, they're not few and far between like you seem to think. But putting aside abusive people and putting aside people like me who choose not to have kids, how do you think a statement like your life has no meaning feels to an infertile person? You clarify that
If you physically can't or for some other serious reason, I understand that. This really goes out to everyone who's actively choosing to not have kids. What is the point of life without having children?
people who can't have kids can still hear you saying that life has no meaning without children. You even say that adoption or stepkids aren't the same as having your own kids. How fucking poisonous of you. I've gotten many comments on my videos about being child-free who say that seeing videos like yours makes them feel absolutely hopeless, whereas seeing videos like mine that show that you can have a happy life without kids shows them that there is still potential for them to enjoy their life. Videos like yours make them feel like their life is over. Your video is hurting people. You go on to cite one source that in your view proves that it's better to have children than not have children, even if the child or children you have are challenging. But your comments show how little research you've done, so let me help you out a bit. In one comment you ask, you think people regret having kids? And yeah, plenty do. It makes zero sense to think that 100% of people enjoy the same experience. First example, the Regretful Parents subreddit, which has 145,000 members, and posts like, why does it never get better? Then we have just one of the Regretful Parents Facebook groups that has 77,000 people in it. That's a lot of people who regret having kids. But let's look at some official research from just last year. Piatowski developed a scale for measuring regret and applied it across two broadly representative sample groups, estimating that in developed countries, 5% to 14% of parents regret their decision to have children and would choose childlessness if they could go back in time. His report referenced one 2013 Gallup poll that asked U.S. parents over 45 how many children they would have wanted if they could redo their lives. Of those surveyed, 7% responded that they would choose to have no children. I also thought that a related article that popped up was very interesting. I kept believing I'll have the baby and then I'll be fine. I haven't reached a point where it's been fine. On a personal note, I have attended the funeral of someone who was coerced into having children. She ended her own life when her daughter was 6 months old because she was so unhappy. Another friend of mine had her depression turn into bipolar disorder after she gave birth. And after having kids, she had many instances of having to go to a psych ward because of self-unaliving ideation. You seem to think that kids are this magical cure-all. They're just not. My friend who was having self-unaliving ideation, she wanted kids. It was her dream to be a mother. And of course, she still wants and loves her children. But again, children aren't a cure-all. They're just another part of life. My friend was not coerced into motherhood, and yet she still struggles. You said in one comment that safety should always be the most important, but then you try to tell people that children will cure their depression. That's so dangerous, and you're going to get people killed. On a less tragic but not less important note, Parenthood does not cause people who were on antidepressants to go off antidepressants, but more often it does cause people who never needed them before to go on antidepressants. And that includes both parents, not just the birthing parent. It's also now being considered that loneliness is an epidemic among parents. I thought kids were a cure-all. And again, these are people who wanted their kids. Wanting kids cannot insulate you against some of the things that come up during parenthood, like loneliness and depression. And one of the things that will inevitably come up when you're a parent is your child suffering. I said to you that even the best parents in the world cannot prevent their children from suffering, and you said, disagree. You're just provably wrong. For example, even if my parents were the best parents in the whole entire world, they could not have prevented the grief I felt when my friend took her own life at 14. The only way they could have prevented that is for me to not have any friends and not go to school with other children. And you, as a black man, need to consider that your children will most likely experience racism, and you're not going to be able to protect them from that. Not saying that's a reason to not have children, however, that is a degree of suffering that you will not be able to prevent. To ignore that reality is just being deliberately obtuse. Finally, you said,
So if you're thinking about not having kids, I would take a hard look at yourself and think again.
Believe it or not, some of us decided to not have kids after taking a hard look at ourselves. A hard look at myself recognized that I have my father's temper and lack of patience. It revealed that I have panic attacks when I'm experiencing a loud, continuous noise, like a child crying. It revealed that my career goals would make having a child much harder. It revealed that when I got pregnant by accident, I would almost die from that pregnancy at 5 weeks and would have to have it surgically removed. I've been in therapy for nearly 12 years, and the more I looked at myself, the more I realized that I never dreamed of having kids. And outside of therapy and taking a hard look at myself, I was a teacher on and off for nearly a decade. And as much as I loved my students, it made me not want to come home to children. You seem very young, and I, as an old person, would like to advise you to take a very hard look at every aspect of life. Your video is hugely insulting because it suggests that if someone doesn't want kids, they just haven't really thought about it hard enough. On the contrary, I've given it more thought than you ever have.